Hello my friends and welcome to another exciting one. Today we are doing a business card mockup and animation from scratch. It's going to be fun and exciting. We're going to learn how to use two cameras or more cameras inside the scene. We're going to learn a lot of cool tips and tricks along the way. Without much talks, open up your blender and let's get started. So as usual, we are going to start from scratch. So I have my blender opened. I'm using the latest version, but you can follow along with any version as well. So I'll go to general, and I'll select my light and my cue, and then I'll hit on X to delete it from the scene. So once we have our first scene, we're going to start by adding in a plane. We are going to use the plane to create our card. So let's do Shift plus A, then let's go to mesh, and then let's add in our plane, right? So with our plane added into our scene, let's hit on N to bring this menu up, and let's go to our items, and then let's scale it on the y-axis. So we are scaling it on this axis, so let's do 1.5 on the y-axis like this. So just like that, we've created our card. So let's quickly tab into edit mode, and then let's hold E to extrude on the z-axis to add in a little bit of thickness like this, right? So let's tap out of edit mode once again, and then with our card selected, let's do Ctrl plus A, and then let's apply our scale. Next, let's add in a little bit of bevel at the tips to make it look a little bit round and beautiful. So I'll go to my modifiers tab, add modifiers, and then we add in the bevel, right? So with the bevel added, let's add the segments, and then let's make it 3 segments, and then let's decrease the amount of bevel a little bit like this, so we have something like this. Next, we can right click and then shade auto smooth to smoothen out our bevel and then smoothing everything out just like that. So as simple as that, we've created our card. So next, let's quickly unwrap this and then add in our front and back material. So the way we are going to do this is we are going to give the front a material, and then we are going to give the back a separate material. So in all, we are going to give them 2 separate materials. So we have 2 separate sides of the card. So we have the front and then we have the back, right? So I'll drag my mouse wheel like this to bring this up here. Then I'll change this to my shader editor, and then with this selected, let's go to our look dev mode so that we'll be able to see what we are doing. So I click on it, and then I'll name it card material front, right? So the material is going to be simple. First, let's give it a darker color so that we can see what we are doing. So with this added, let's add in a noise texture. So let's do Shift plus A. Now let's look for our noise texture. Now let's put it here. Now let's add in a bump node. So bump node, let's put it here. So we put our normal into the normal, and then the factor, the color into the height like this, right? So let's put our normal into the normal, and then the color into the height, right? To take some time before Blender compiles it, so that we have something like this. So once we have something like this, we can increase the scale, make it a very big scale like this, right? So that we have this kind of texture. So let's increase the scale to 200. Then maybe we can increase the detail a bit, then increase the roughness, right? And then increase the lacunarity a little bit, and then we are not going to touch the distortion, right? So once we have something like this, we can decrease the strength a little like this. So let's say let's do 0.2 like this, right? So just like that, we've created our textured card. Next, let's add in our top parts, which will be the front of our business card. So I'll hit G to bring this down to the side. Then I'll select the principal BSDF, and then I'll hit on Ctrl plus T, right? So once we hit on Ctrl plus T, we will get our image texture with the mapping coordinate, and then the mapping coordinate set to UV, right? Make sure you have your Node Wrangler add-on active to be able to do this, right? So once we have our image texture plugged in, let's quickly add in our image texture. So by the way, I'm going to leave a link in the description below for you to grab both the front and back of the image if you want to follow along. So I hit on open, and then I'll locate where I saved my business card, As you can see, I have my business card front, then I have my back. So I'll first select the front, and then I'll hit on open to add it into our scene like this, right? So as you can see, it's added, but then it's added in the wrong way. So we have to go to our UV editing tab to fix it so that it appears correctly, right? So with this added, it's already set to UV. So let's quickly jump to our UV editing tab. So once we have our UV editing tab like this, we can change this to our look dev mode once again so that we can see what we are doing, right? So I'll make sure I have my face select mode active, and then with this face selected, I'll hit on U, and then I'll go to unwrap this face like this. And then I'll do the same thing here as well. So I'll select this face U, and then I'll unwrap it as well, right? So we are going to unwrap both faces, and then once we apply one, we just quickly swap the materials and everything will work perfectly. So now once we have these two faces unwrapped, I can select both of the faces like this. So I select one, hold shift, select the other, the bottom part, and then I'll drag to select both of them like this, and then we will first rotate it -90, and then position it in place nicely like this, right? So front and back, everything is positioned perfectly. And then let's hit on S to scale it up until it's covering our entire shape like this nicely. So we have the front, and then we have the back nicely like that, right? So once we are done, let's go back and then continue with our material. So we'll go to our layout, then this is what we have, right? So the front and then the back, right? So now let's say we want to change the color. We want to be able to change the color anytime we want, but then we have only this label to work with. So to do that, we are going to mix to principal BSDF, and then we are going to use this image here, the image we imported, as a mask, so that we'll be able to interchange between two colors seamlessly and easily, right? So first, let's remove this for now, and then let's select this and hit on Ctrl+D to create a duplicate like this, and then let's do Shift A, and then let's look for mix shader. Now let's put the mix shader in the middle. Now let's plug this right here. Let me change this to a red color. We'll come back to it later. So I'll change it to any color like this. And then we'll bring this image that we imported. We'll plug it here, right? To see what we have. So as you can see, we are now using this image as a mask to drive between these two shaders like this, right? So everything in black will be shown from this shader, and then everything in white will be shown from the shader. Just like that, we've separated these two shaders. But let me quickly swap this like this, right? So that we see what we have. So just like that. So now we can easily change the color of any of the components easily. So we can decide to give it this a different color, and it won't affect our label. So I'm going to give it a darker blue like this, and then we can decide to give this a different color as well. So let's go with white like this, right? So any color you want, you can decide to play out with it. So as simple as that. So first, let me change this to a white, and then I will change this to a darker blue like this. Change this to a white color like this, right? As simple as that. So that's it for the material. Next, let's see how we can give the bottom part a different material from the top part, right? So let's go to our materials properties tab like this, and let's hit on plus to create a new material, right? So once we create a new material, we can hit on new, and then choose the same card front that we did for a second. So let's just for now, let's just hit on new to add in a new material, and then let's change the base color to red, just for documentation purpose. We'll change it back later. So once we have this, we can go select our material, select our label, select our card, hit on tab to go into edit mode, and then select this bottom part here, right? And then select this material, and then we can hit on assign to assign this material to just the bottom part. So now the bottom part is red, and then the top part is our label, right? So once we do that, we can now come to this socket here and then change it to our card front, the old card front. So it will go back to the first one, but then we will just create a duplicate of the second one. So we just hit on this to create a new material from the first one. So I'll just hit on it to create a duplicate, right? So once we create a duplicate, now we can hit on this one here to open a new material, and then we can paste in the back of our card. So I'll just double click my back, and then our back of the card will be applied inside like this, right? So now we can change the colors of this one as well. So I'll make this a darker blue like this, and then change this to a white version, nicely like that. So just like that, we've swapped the colors, and then we've given them different colors, and this is editable. We can always come back to it and then give it different color if we don't like. So I can decide to go with a different shade of color in case, and choose whatever I want. So as simple as that. That's how we can create something nice like that. So that's it for the card. One last thing, maybe we can select this material front, and then we can rename it to material back, this. Then one last thing, we can add a little bit of bump to both of them. So I'll just select the front, and then to add the bump, we are going to add it to this darker place, since that's the one that shows the logo. So we are on the front one. So we just select this bump node here, and then we can do Shift D to create a duplicate. Then we plug the bump node into the normal, and then we are going to use this same color here. So we are going to drag and then put it into the height to create our bump, right? So if you scroll inside, let's indent it, and then we can see what we are doing. So Blender is loading. So if you scroll inside, you can see we have a little bit of bump and indent inside our logo. It looks nice. We can do the same thing for the other one. So Shift D, create a bump, and then I'll just paste this bump inside. Let me bring my nodes here, and then do the same thing for this one. Put it into the height to create a little bit of bump inside, just to give it a little bit more detail, right? So that's it for our materials. So at this point, let's change this back to our timeline editor, and let me bring this down a little bit like this. Then we hit on tab to jump out of edit mode, right? So once we jump out of edit mode, I'll select this card, and then I'll do Shift plus D to create a duplicate, and then I'll bring it at the back like this, and then hit on R to rotate it on the y-axis 180 degrees, so that I can flip this at the back like this, right? So that we have this, we have the front, and then we have the back. Now let me select both of them, and then hit on S to scale them down a little bit so they are a little bit smaller. Shift Control A to apply my scale. So next, let's set up our scene, and then let's create our animation. So I'll drag this here to bring up another view. So this is going to be our camera view. So I'll hit on the camera to bring our camera in place. I'll hit on N to hide everything like this. So once we have our camera in place, we hit on lock to lock our camera to the view. So now let's scroll our mouse wheel until we have our cards nicely laid in our camera scene like this. Now next, we can focus on this one, and then let's add in a couple of elements to make everything look nice. So let's do Shift A, and let's add in the mesh cube. The cube is very big. Let's scale it down, then G to bring it back like this. Then I'll just bring it back like this. Bring it to the side. So at this point, I will advise you, you can feel free to create whatever kind of composition you want. It's all up to you. We've created the cards already, so this, I'm just freestyling my way into creating something nice for myself. So I'll bring this, make this smaller. then Z to bring this up a little bit like this, right? So once we have this, let's do Control A and let's apply our scale. Let's tab into edit mode and then let's add in a little bit of detail to this one. So let's do Control R, add in a loop cut, then let's scroll our mouse wheel like this to add in a lot more details like this. Then let's go to our face select mode, hold shift and then select every other face nicely like that. Then once we are done selecting every other face, we are going to extrude it up and then give it some bevel. So once we are done selecting every other face like this, we will hit on E to extrude it up like this, so that we are creating a little bit of detail. Let me just do G to bring it down. Then once we extrude it, we tab out of edit mode. This is what we have. Then bring it down and then let's add in a bevel. So with this selected, we go to our modifiers tab and then we look for a bevel. Then we add in a bevel. Let's set it to 3. Then let's decrease the bevel weight a little bit. And let's right click and then shade auto smooth to shade everything auto smooth. So this will be on the side like this. And then next, let's add in a huge one, which will be the backdrop. So Shift A and then let's add in a plane at the bottom. G to bring it down. Let's bring it down like this and then let's scale it up till it covers the entire thing like this, right? And then next, maybe we can add in a little bit of shape at this side as well. So let's do Shift A and then let's add in a cube once again. Let's make sure the cube is small. S to scale it down so we have a little bit of part like this. And let's do G to bring it to the back side. Then to this side, let me just change this to like this. Go to our side view, G, Z, bring it down on the Z axis like this, so that we have a little bit of cube line on the side like this. Feel free to play with it, create your own composition, put things, move things around. That's experiment and then till you find what works best for you, right? So we put this on the side like this. And then next, maybe we can add one last thing on the top. So let's select this, Shift A, and then let's apply our scale. And then next we can maybe do Shift D to create a duplicate, then scale it up, make it a little bit thinner, then bring it on the side like this, right? Something like this, just something to fill in the space. Then maybe we can make this a glass object, just to make the whole thing look beautiful and nice, right? So we can position our camera in place like this nicely, right? So next, let's focus on adding materials for the objects we just created. So I'll drag my mouse wheel to bring it to this side. I'll lock my camera so that I'll be able to scroll to zoom in so that we can see what we are doing, and then lock my camera again. And then let's first start with the bottom part. So we select the main background, jump into our shader editor, then let's add in a new material. So this is going to be a very simple one. We're just going to make it a darker blue like this. So this will be the base, the main material. And then let's select this, and then we are going to create a simple procedural wood material. So with this selected, let's hit on new, and then let's rename it to our wood like this. And then we are going to use a noise texture to create the wood. So first, let's add Shift A, and then let's add our noise texture. And then next, let's add Shift A, and then let's add our color ramp into the scene like this, right? So we'll plug the factor into the factor, and then we plug the color into the base, right? So I'll scroll my mouse wheel to this side, and then I'll change to our solid shading view so that you can see what we have, right? So this is what we have so far. Next, we can decrease our scale, increase our detail, and then maybe increase the lacunarity a little bit, and then increase our roughness, right? So that we have something like this. Next, we can push our color ramp maybe decrease the lacranality, and then increase our scale. Let's decrease the scale a little bit, so we can push this and this around so that we can see what we have. So basically this is what we have. Let's select the noise and then let's hit on Ctrl+T to add in the mapping node, and then let's change it from generated to object, right, so that we can clearly see what we are doing. Then we can add in a little bit of distortion like this to create our wood pattern nicely like that, right? So once we create this, so just increase the detail, decrease the lacranality a bit, and then add in some distortion like this to create this nice wooden pattern. So once we create that nice wooden pattern, we can scale, we can increase the scaling in the mapping node as well. So just to stretch things a little bit to create that wooden pattern to make it look even more like a wood. So once we are done with that, we can then play with the colors. So I'll select this top here, double click, and then add in a darker color like this, and then select this, double click, and then add in another dark color like this to create our wood, right? And then next we can add in a little bit of bump to make the whole thing look a little bit more realistic. So Shift A, search for bump node, and then with our bump node, let's plug our bump to the normal, and then let's add in another color ramp here. Shift A, color ramp. So let's put the color ramp here, and then let's put the color into the height, and then let's feed in the noise to the factor like this, so that we can add in a little bit of bump into our material. So let's decrease the strength a little bit like this, right? So we have something nice like this. So that's it for our wood. We're going to apply the same material to this one. So we select this and then hold Shift and select this, and then we do Ctrl+L, and then link material to apply the material to this one as well. Then next we select this and then we give it a simple glass. So I'll add in a new material, select this, hit on X to delete it from our scene, and then we do Shift A, and we look for glass BSDF. Now let's place it into the surface like this so that we can have a nice glass. Let's make it a little bit rough. Then with our glass selected, we can add in a little bit of bevel as well. So let's select, generate, and then bevel. Then we can increase the segment to 2, then decrease scale. Now we have this kind of glass, shade auto smooth. I have this nice glass like this, right? So once everything is, let's quickly save it. So I'll save mine, and then we are ready for our animation. So once everything is looking nice, let's swap to our cycles to see how beautiful everything is looking. So first let's add in let's go to our render engine, then let's change it from Eevee to cycles. Now I'm going to change the device to GPU compute like this, right? So once we do that, we can then swap, hit on this to preview it inside our cycles. So this is what we have. So let me quickly add in a HDRI. So I'll go to world, select my background, and then Shift T, Ctrl+T to add in environment texture with the texture mapping coordinates set to generated. Now I'll hit on open. Then I'll locate where I saved my HDRI. You can Google some, it's free online. Now I'll just put any HDRI into the scene to see what we have. So this is what we have. It's looking nice. I can maybe increase the strength of my HDRI so that we can see what we are doing. I think everything looks nice. Yeah, I think everything looks nice. We can change this back to world, and then maybe swap with a different shader, and then see what we have. Yeah, so basically that's it. Next we can jump into our animation, and then we can start moving things around to make everything look even more beautiful. So to continue on, we can add in our own light to brighten up everything even more. So let's do Shift A, then let's add in an area light, G, then let's bring it up on the X axis like this, and let's scale it up, G, and then let's position it to this side. Then let's increase the power. So let's go with, let's say 1000, right? Then let's hit on S to scale it up even more. Then let's position it on the side. So I'll go to my top view, G, then I'll position it on this side like this. Maybe decrease the power to, let's say 500. 1000 is too much. Let's say 200. Yeah, I think 200 looks better, so that we have something like this, right? We have something nice like this. Next, let's continue with our animation. So with everything set up, next let's see how we are going to animate our card. So the way we want to animate the card is, we want this, the first card here, to pop up from the frame and then rotate in a 360. So it's going to be a very simple animation. So first, let's change this to our timeline. Then I'll bring this down, then bring this up a little bit like this. I'll change it to our solid shading view so that we can see what we are doing, right? So I'll select this card, since that is the one we are going to animate. Then we are going to bring this 3D cursor in the middle so that we'll be able to add in an empty to parent the card to it. So we do Control S, do Shift S, and then cursor to selected to bring our cursor right in the middle of our card. So once our cursor is right in the middle, we can do Shift A, then we can add in an empty of a plane as it's like this, right? So once we add in the empty in the middle, you can select the card and then hold Shift click to select the empty. Then we can do Control plus P and then parent to keep objects transform. Now if we select the empty and we hit on G, we'll be able to move the empty and the card will follow it along as well, right? So let me change this to our look depth so that we can see what we're doing. So once we do that, next let's add in our animation to the empty. So with the empty selected, let's hit on K to add in location and rotation keyframe, right? So we add a location and rotation keyframe at frame 1. Then we move our key distance to frame 60. And then we hit on G, and then bring it up like this, almost up to the side, and then we can add in location and rotation keyframe as well, right? So now if you go back and then we hit on play, this is what we have. We have a simple animation. So it goes from this frame to this frame. It just raises up like this, right? Nice and simple. So once we have this, we want it to raise up very slowly, goes up fast, and then ends up very slowly, right? So we want it to raise very slowly, goes up fast, and then ends very slowly. So to do that, we have to play with our timing. So let's select this, and then let's go to our graph editor. I'll drag and bring this up, and then I'll hit on normalize to put the keyframe we just created. So you can see it's marked by the blue, this blue line, which shows that it's the z-axis that we just animated. So I'll hold this, select this point here, I'll drag to bring this out like this, and then I'll select this point, and then I'll drag to bring this out as well. So now once we do this, if we hit on play, you can see how the animation is. It starts very slow and then it speeds up right about this side, and then it goes back very slow. So we have this kind of animation, right? So that's the first animation. Next, let's add an animation for the card, right? So we are going to tilt it a little bit, and then once it goes up, it rotates 90 degrees, right? So let's change this back to our timeline. Then with our card selected, make sure we have the card, not the point, not this one, right? So with the card selected, let's hit on P, let's hit on K to add in rotation and location keyframe at frame 1, and then at frame 60, let's rotate it on the Y axis. So we hit on R, Y, and then we can do rotate it like this, right? And then we can hit on K, then we can add location and rotation keyframe right about frame 60. So now if we hit on play, this is what we have, right? It's like the card is raising to the sky. So let me hit on play once again. Just focus on this one. We come back to the camera later on. So if you hit on play, this is what we have, right? So that's it. That's it basically for the card animation, for the first part of the card animation. Next, let's animate our camera, right? So we select our camera. We want our camera to start somewhere. Let me select this, position this in place. So we want our camera to start somewhere here. So let's select our camera and then hit on K to add in location and rotation keyframe, right? Make sure it's at frame 1. So at frame 1, we have our camera starting from this, and then right at frame, it doesn't really matter, but we are still going to animate our camera. So right at frame 50, right, we are going to move our camera. So I'll just select one of the cards here, then move our camera slightly and then up like this, so that it's like the camera is panning and moving up. And then once we have the camera the position we want, you see right now we have this card selected. So let's make sure we go back and select our camera again, make sure our camera is active, and then we hit on K and then add location and rotation keyframe, right? So now if we hit on play, this is the kind of animation we have, right? So this is the kind of animation we have. Next, let's add in another camera to continue with the animation once this card moves out of frame of the first camera. So with our 3D cursor here, let's do Shift A and then let's add in another camera. So we have a camera added in the scene. So we can select, we have camera 1 and then we have camera 2, right? So with the camera 1 selected, we can hit on this. So we are still looking to the first camera, right? And then the second camera is here. So now we have these two cameras. Let's see how we can swap between them based on the timeline, where we are in the timeline. So this is very simple. It looks simple. It looks less complicated than it seems. So with this camera selected, let's go to the first frame and then let's add in a marker at the first frame. So I'll select marker and then I'll hit on add marker. So I'll hit on M to add a marker at the first frame. So we have a marker here. So once we add the marker, let's make sure we still have the camera selected. Then we go to our marker and then we can bind camera to markers, right? So once we have the camera selected, marker, then we can do bind camera to marker, right? So now this camera is bind to the first marker, right? So we want it to swap right about somewhere here, right? So it will swap to the second camera right about frame 29. So at the second camera, let's add another marker here. So we add a marker at frame 29. Then let's select the camera, the second camera. Then we go to marker again. And then we can do bind camera to marker, right? So as you can see, it flips to the second camera to make it the active camera right at frame 21. So now that we have the second camera as the active camera, we can just select one of these and then position it into the scene anyhow we want. All right. So we want the second camera to look like this into our scene, right? So now if we go back and then hit on play, you can see right at this frame, the camera is going to swap to the second camera. So let's hit on play. You see, and it swaps to the second camera. So this is exactly what we are looking for. I hope it was not that complicated. So this camera, we just have to first set a marker. So once we have the marker in place, we select the camera and then we bind camera to marker, as simple as that. And then when it hits that particular frame, the camera is going to swap to the second one. So if you take a look at here, you can see this is the active one. There's the black one, which shows the one we are viewing through. And then this triangle here is empty. But then once it hits frame 29, it swaps to this one. And then this one becomes empty. And then the second camera takes place, So that's it. So next, let's add our animation to the second camera as well. Right. So with the second camera selected, we want it to start from here, something like this. Right. So with the second camera, let's make sure we have the second camera active, and then let's bring this back to somewhere here. Right, this is the place we want to start moving the second camera. So with the second camera, which is the camera 001, let's hit on K to add in location and rotation keyframe here. Right, and then at frame 70, once this is risen, we can then move our second camera. So GC to move it up, and then position it in place like this. And then we can add an extra keyframe here. So we can hit on K to add in location and rotation keyframe right at frame 70. Now, if we hit on play, this is what we have. Right. So it's just the same animation, but then we are viewing it through different cameras at different timeline. So let's hit on play once again. Then you see it swaps to the second camera nicely like that. So maybe we can change the angle of the second camera. We can make it a 90 degrees angle, so that it's a little bit like this. And then maybe we can zoom back a little like this. Let me add, once you zoom back, let's add location and rotation keyframe once again to this last frame. So now if we hit on play, it goes back like this. Right, so we can select this, then G to bring it back maybe to frame 80. So let's hit on play, then it swaps to the second camera like this, and then the second camera follows along. Yeah, as simple as that. So lastly, we can add in our rotation animation to our card. Right, so once the card at this frame, so let's go to, let's say, frame 80, and then we can hit on R to add in rotation. So double tap R to add in rotation animation like this. Right, and then we can hit on K to add in location and rotation keyframe, so that we add in a rotation like this. So let's hit on play to see what we have so far. I'll hit on my play, so it jumps to the next camera and then it rotates into scene. Right, so we can select these two rotation here, and then go to our graph editor. Then we can play with those two rotations to make sure it's smooth enough. So I think it's this. It's these last ones. Let's play with the timeline so it is smooth enough. Yeah, I think it's fine. Just take your time, then play with it till you find what works best for you. So I'll go back to my timeline, and then let's hit on play to preview all our animation. So it jumps up and then it swaps into scene like this nicely. So let's change it back to our shade viewport mode so that we can see what we have. Right, so this is what we have. Let's go back and then let's make this a transparent. So this is our HDRI that we see in the background. So let's hide it from the scene. So let's go to our render properties, go to film, and then let's take transparent to make it a transparent object, so that we have something like this. Nice. Select our light and then bring it to the side a little bit. Yeah, do we have something like this? So next, I think everything is looking nice, with the exception of this. I think it's swapped the other way around, so we can easily fix it. Let's select this, go to our UV editing tab, then select the back, and then we can right click and then go to mirror X. No, let me go back, mirror Y to fix it. Right, so now it's properly aligned the way we want. So we mirrored it on the Y and then on the X to fix it nicely. And if I go back to my layout, you can see it looks nicer now, right? So that we have this flipping like this. And then finally, let's select this Shift D, create a duplicate, bring it to the back, and then R to rotate it on the Y axis 90 degrees to add in this backdrop like this. So now if we hit on play, go back to this, and then we hit on play, this is what we have. And then it swaps to the second one, and then it flips to the last scene like this. Right, nice and beautiful. Control S to save our progress, and then we can finally render our scene. So to render our final scene, since our animation takes place up to the 100th frame, we can set the endpoints to 100, and then can come to our color management, then change the look, make it maybe a high contrast look so that we have some contrast like this. Nice, beautiful. So maybe one last thing, we can make this metallic. This, my friend, the logo here, metallic. So we can go to our shader editor, change this to object, then make sure you have this selected. So the front one, the front material, then we can come to this side here and then make this metallic, and then decrease the roughness a little bit so that this becomes metallic. Now if I go back to my timeline, then we try to scroll through the timeline, you can see nicely. Right, so it catches some reflection right at this point. So let's do Control S to save our final scene. Then once everything is done, can go to our, can come here to our output, and then make sure we set it to PNG, and then we can set the compression to 0, and then let's change it from RGBA to just RGB. There's no backdrop or anything that we want to hide. And then finally we can hit on render, and then render animation to render our final animation. I hope you learned something today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. More is on its way coming. Yeah, from the last pool. So you guys have finally decided on whether we should do geometry node or more product animation, and majority of the votes was on geometry node. So we are going to see, but then a lot of people still wants us to do more product animation. So we are going to see how we can merge the two together, do a geometry node tutorial and then product animation tutorial. So we do a geometry node tutorial that is targeted towards product animation. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. See you on the next one. It's my friend, and peace out.